Welcome to Nonprofit Nerd Impact Unleashed. Get ready to dive into the world of nonprofit leadership and sustainability, where the passion and unstoppable dedication of those making a real impact are celebrated. With your host, Jarrett Ransom, get ready to explore inspiring stories and game changing strategies of nonprofit leaders from across the sector. In this season, we're focusing on critical management challenges that are key to the long-term success of nonprofit organizations. Nonprofit Nerd Impact Unleashed is your go-to podcast for no-nonsense, in-depth conversations with the real-life superheroes of the nonprofit sector. Get ready to unleash your inner nerdiness and learn how to navigate and overcome the challenges that help build stronger, more sustainable organizations. Now, let's dive in and harness the collective power of our nonprofit networks to create lasting change.
Welcome back, and thank you for joining me for another episode of Nonprofit Nerd Impact Unleashed. I'm really excited to introduce you to today's guest, Christine Thompson. Christine and I dive deep into an honest and insightful conversation about power and money and how we can rethink the traditional funder-grantee dynamic. This casual yet impactful discussion is full of valuable insights about what funders are looking for in nonprofit leadership today, how philanthropy is evolving, and what leaders can do to navigate these challenging funder relationships. Christine also shares practical advice on how to advocate for more trust-based and equitable funding models. True to her generous spirit, she doesn't hold back. In fact, she believes in transparency and in sharing what works across the sector. She even talks about a roundtable that she facilitates for CEOs in her community. It's a space that is breaking down barriers of competition and sparking powerful collaborative conversations. And of course, I want to give a special thank you to Bloomerang for being this season's sponsor and for elevating these conversations and helping us bring meaningful insights to our sector. I hope you enjoy this episode with Christine and that you walk away feeling inspired with new ideas to strengthen your leadership and your organization's mission. Well, hello, and I'm so thrilled to have you here, Christine. For all of our listeners, Christine Thompson, another fantastic guest from my local community, or maybe I'm from your local community, but regardless, we are in Arizona and really the Metro Phoenix community. So, Christine, thank you. Thanks for saying yes.
Oh, thank you, Jarrett. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you. And, I really like to start off because maybe some people haven't met you yet, but would you just kick us off a little bit by telling us who you are, about yourself, and the roles that you play in the sector at large?
Sure. So I've had a long and varied career, both in the nonprofit and government sectors. I started off fresh out of college, leading a statewide nonprofit advocacy organization that advocated for university students across the state. I went to law school, decided I wanted to be a lobbyist. I was a lobbyist for a number of years, ultimately led a state agency for a period of time, then went back into nonprofit work, led another statewide education advocacy organization that advocated for higher education expectations from birth all the way through career. Did that for a few years. It merged with two other organizations. And ultimately, I went into consulting work, which has led me now to working with the Arizona Together for Impact Fund as their director. So I've also done fundraising work. I did development for about a year and a half at one of the universities in the state. So a little bit of everything, but all of my career has been rooted in one way or another in playing well with others and collaborating in one way or another. So this work here at the Arizona Together for Impact Fund makes sense in that arc.
Wow. I don't even think I knew just how extensive that arc is. And I'm going to say that you've dabbled in all of these different places and ways and
Yeah.
stages. I feel like I have too, and often like a Jane of trades, right? But like
Yeah.
master of none, because we have really, and that's why I say roles, because we have, as nonprofit leaders, you take on whatever needs to be taken on to get the job
Yep.
done. So
Absolutely. And even, thrown in there because we all, we do this. Not only are we paid leaders of organization, but we
yes,
volunteer on boards. And in some of those instances, it was a board where the small staff left and then you start pitching in. So
right, the
all the
working
hats,
board.
right?
All the
All the
hats.
hats.
I said, like, we're on Zoom, but maybe you're just listening to us. But like, if you could see, like, our hats go beyond the screen
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you for
Tall and wide.
all and wide. And there's more
Yeah.
on the rack, right?
Yeah.
Well, as we talk, I really love how you can bring in this intersection when it comes to, not just nonprofit leaders, but funders. I feel like funders are
Mhm.
still very demystified, right? Like a lot of us
Mhm.
are intimidated to talk to funders. We're not quite sure how to do that. And in your role, you've got so many great stories, I'm sure. But I'm curious as we start the conversation if there's any
Mhm.
particular qualities that funders in particular want to see in the nonprofit leadership space today. What comes to mind when
Yeah,
you think of that?
I think that it feels like we're in a lot like a time that we were in during COVID, right? And the only thing that's certain is uncertainty. And
Yes.
change is constant, right? All of those little sayings. But I think what funders are really looking for are organizations with leadership that are ready to take on those challenges, right? And I mean that in a way where it's not like, oh, everything's fine, we're fine. We're not paying attention to what's going on, but tackling challenges head on, saying, we know there's disruption coming, so we're planning for it early. We're not coming saying, oh, we just need more money because there's a deficit, but here are the
Oh,
things we've done.
sorry, you cut out real quick.
Oh, okay.
It's okay. The audio just cut out.
Can you hear
Uh,
me okay?
yeah, I hear you fine now. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know when
Okay.
to start back up, but maybe just,
Uh, so I think that funders are really looking for organizations, not to say everything's fine, I'm fine, everything's fine, blinders on, but really considering there's disruption on the road ahead. How are we,
sorry.
is
I
it
don't know what's,
messing up? I
yeah, I
wonder
don't
if
know
it's
what's
my headphone. I
happening.
wonder if I take my headphones off. Hold on.
I
Let
don't
me,
know. It's so bizarre. Let me see. Sorry, this honestly doesn't
can you
happen. So
hear me? Can
I
you
can
hear
hear,
with this speaker better?
yeah, I can hear you just fine. Let me shut
Okay.
down some things too and see if I'm dealing with. And
We'll blame Amazon.
well, I was gonna blame the rain.
Rain and Amazon and Cox. We might as well throw it all in today.
Let's just throw it all in there. Gosh darn it. Okay.
I will shut down other junk on my computer too, just in case it's on my end.
I know. It's so weird. I did actually Jacqueline, I had her on earlier
Uh-huh.
today, and it was smooth sailing. So it's like, what the heck? All right, let me get some.
It's always something. And I've done so much media before. None of stopping and starting
Oh,
over again
good.
doesn't bother me. So
Okay. Sorry, I'm embarrassed on my end because it shouldn't
do
be.
not be embarrassed.
That's
Resilience.
right. If there's anything, there's that.
Yep.
Okay. Well, my VA will edit this out, so
Okay.
you
Is
can start.
the
Yeah,
audio's okay with this? I turned the mic off on the headphones, so I'm
yeah. I
wondering if
think it
there's
works great.
okay. So start back where I was.
Yeah, wherever you want to kick off again.
So I think what funders are really looking for in this time of, all of this change and uncertainty is entities who are willing to tackle that in a way, and leaders who are willing to tackle that. So not leaders who are blind to the challenges that are ahead, but really thinking about strategically about the road's going to be bumpy. What are we going to, how are we going to tackle that? What are we going to do? Strategically, I know that there's challenges. How could we play well with others, partner, maybe scale down or scale up in order to answer those challenges? But I think what's important there is it's not just entities saying we're in a rough spot, we need more, right? That there are times when that needs to be said.
Sure.
But it can't be the constant drumbeat. It needs to be, we need a bridge because here's how we're going to address the longer term issue, not we need a bridge to the next bridge to the next bridge. So I think that as far as leadership goes, leaders really thinking about being problem solvers, about I think a slightly overused word, innovating in a way, really considering what they can do differently, really thinking about mission hard, and if everything that they're doing within their organization really is advancing their mission, or if they need to scale up or scale down. I think all of those things are important.
I really appreciate that. And I have a feeling, because I've kind of been in this situation where we are scared to tell the honest truth to the funders,
Yeah,
because we're like, what if they know our dirty secret
yeah,
that
yeah,
we're not okay, right? And that
yeah,
this bridge is needed. But how many times, like you said, can we really ask for this bridge in a way that it doesn't look like we're not sustainable? We don't,
right,
we don't have the best financial planning, or
right.
haven't made the best decision. So I appreciate you sharing that. And in that, I think philanthropy is shifting. We've seen it
Yeah.
shift. I think it's going to shift in the next 5 to 10 years. Do you think that's true, or am I out in left field? But what are you seeing?
No, I think that, from the time it hasn't been that long ago that I was the CEO of an organization. It's less
Okay.
than 5 years. But in that short period of time, I think this movement more toward, I'm not going to say into, more toward trust-based philanthropy is really gaining some legs, right? And I think there are some entities that are still kind of stuck in the old ways, but I think there are more and more who are thinking about their philanthropic endeavors as long-term relationships with organizations to move the community forward. And I think more of that's going to happen. I think that it's still interesting how, technically we're all nonprofits. Philanthropy is nonprofits, and the nonprofits are nonprofits, right? And it's interesting to me sometimes. I think that funders are kind of in a frame like, oh, we can't meet with them because they're going to ask us for money.
Sure.
And nonprofits are kind of in a space where it's like, gee, like you said, are we going to, share all our secrets, or will they find something out that we like? We have to put on, we have to put on our best face every time we're in front of them. But you do need those honest conversations because things can come out of them. Like, people are making assumptions about both sides. Like, well, why don't they just give more to us, spend down? Well, if they spent down, there wouldn't be any more later down the road. Or why aren't they doing XYZ? Well, because there's 6 other funders telling them that they won't fund that. So I think there needs to be more spaces in which philanthropy and the nonprofit grantees are in spaces where they're learning from each other and talking to each other. And I don't think there are quite enough of those. But that trust-based philanthropy movement, I think, is changing that some because program officers are having much more meaningful, deep conversations, I think, with entities to learn about what they're doing.
I appreciate that. And, I wish we could have more of these convenings. I wish we could have more conversations. And I don't want to say they're not happening, because they
Right.
are.
Yeah.
And, I think those leaders that know how to navigate this are really the ones maybe even inviting the conversation. So
Yeah.
have advice for leaders on how we maybe should approach navigating, these tough, I'm going to say tough, maybe they're not tough for some, but the funder dynamics.
Yeah, I think funders are as varied as people and organizations are. I think the challenge is trying to develop those relationships that are outside of just the, once a year we're giving our update, and by the way, when is my next grant application due, right? Purposefully trying to find time and space to create that relationship with someone, and to learn more about it, right? To learn more about the fund. Now, you're going to know right away if there's a funder who's like, nope, we don't operate that way. But you can also ask. Arizona is so philanthropically relatively tiny. I think you can have, once you have a strong relationship with someone, you could say to them, I'm a grantee of yours. I'm trying to understand if this other, do you know anything about XYZ fund or foundation? Because I'm trying to build a relationship. I know we might not be a fit right now for funding, but I'm trying to understand how it operates. Can you share with me how it operates? Or do you know somebody over there? It's the same as building any other network. It just takes time and frankly resources. And nonprofits are stretched so thin to put some extra time and effort into that can sometimes be to be difficult if there's not going to be a return on that investment for the long term.
That's a great angle. And back to the demystifying, like I feel like so many people are intimidated by funders because they don't want to do something wrong. They do want to make sure they show up with their best face, like everything's roses. And it's
Yeah.
not. Like the reality is it's just not.
Yeah.
But I'm really curious, right? Like there is that misconception that we can't, I think, because I see it, that like we can't ask one funder about another funder,
Yeah.
or like how do we leverage
Well,
these connections and relationships?
Well, and to emphasize, put a little emphasis on that, I was part of, and now I'm a facilitator of a leadership circle of a number of nonprofit leaders. And one of the coolest things that I have seen in that group is it's a group of CEOs who have, we know we're in a cone of silence when we're having those conversations, but I can tell you some of the most interesting interactions have been when somebody says, "Oh, I'm doing a presentation tomorrow to XYZ funder." And everyone around the room started talking about, "I've applied to them. Oh, did you know that that person was associated here? And I know them. Let me connect you, or tell them I said hi when you get on the call," right? So, to that point, we're not all in competition with each other all the time. And to make clear, so I think those relationships and that networking, we've got to stop thinking, I know the secret of communicating with this funder. We should be talking with other nonprofit leaders, because I know in my experience that, I've sat down with somebody, even if it's a single donor, not a foundation, but a single donor, and talking to them, and they're, mildly interested in what we do and might, write a small check in my past life. But I hear where their passion is, and I'm like, well, we are not that. You are not putting us in your, in your will. But I might know other organizations that they might not be connected with. And I can say in that instance, oh, are you involved with this organization or that organization? Because it sounds like you're interested in things that they do, or connect those leaders with that person. I'm never going to get that donation, that big money out of that person, because their passion isn't with my organization. But why, like, keep it a secret? What, you don't have to post it on the internet, but for
Right.
those relationships that you have. So I think that this issue about relationship with funders, it's also about nonprofit to nonprofit relationships, and building those in a way where nonprofit leaders can support each other and it's not dog eat dog.
And I hope that is happening. I love that example. I love this, group that you shared. And you're right. Like with another guest, Jacqueline Peterson, whom you know, right? We talked about psychological safety and staff,
Yeah.
and to be able to talk openly with leadership. And I think it's the same from nonprofit
Yeah.
leader to nonprofit leader. But I think what it highlights is really like, stop thinking about competition. We really are in collaboration. And I love what you said, because I come at these conversations too from a fundraising standpoint, that it is our obligation to steward the donor with their best interest in
Yes.
mind, not our bottom line to meet our
Yeah.
personal goal. It's what is it the individual wants to do to make an impact with their dollars.
Right, right. And how does that fit with your organization or a different organization? I think that's really important. And to the work that my current fund does, I think one of the important pieces that I found so interesting and why I love leading this organization is because this fund is giving money to help resource conversations. No program, just giving entities the space to be able to have conversations about joint programming, shared back office, mergers and acquisitions, asset transfers, any of those things. And I think thinking about, how entities can work together. It goes back to one of those, things I talked about previously about, forward thinking. How are you going to serve the mission? And it doesn't mean you have to stand something up by yourself or that you have to keep doing the thing that you've been doing. It might be important to the community, but it might not be a fit for your entity anymore. And how could you hand that off to somebody else? So I think that those relationships with funders, with other nonprofit entities, really understanding the community and the needs and who could be a best fit. None of these are failures. It's important conversations to have, but then I think it sets entities up for broader thinking and more opportunity for success when they have those conversations.
I agree. And you kind of touched on, the merger acquisition, the funding, the conversations to even explore, these other merger acquisitions and just strategic partnerships. So
Yeah.
unscripted, but I would love it if you are willing to talk a little bit about, because Arizona Together for Impact obviously is Arizona, right? And a lot of our
Yes.
listeners are like, well, darn, I don't live there. Like, does another one exist for me? So maybe
Yeah.
sustained collaboration, right? Is that
Oh,
something
yeah.
you're willing to just kind of give us a little high
Oh,
level?
happy to, because Arizona Together for Impact Fund is one of roughly a dozen funds around the country that are part of the Sustained Collaboration Network. You can find out more about them at sustainedcollab.org. And on our website, we've got a link to the Sustained Collaboration Network. But it's generally collaborative funds across the country who are doing similar work. I used to be able to say we were the only statewide fund, but Massachusetts literally just launched a statewide fund within the last 3 weeks.
Wow.
So
Congrats,
we're,
Massachusetts.
I know, props. And we have, like I said, there's about a dozen of us, but we have had so much interest from funders around the country interested in doing similar work and supporting similar work, that it is very likely within the next year or two that we could double that number of
Oh,
funds. It is nuts. And nuts in a good way.
right.
And to have that real interest in people saying, oh, we recognize that if we give funds to programming, you can't use that for a conversation about,
Right.
an operational conversation, which is nice. And I think at the end of the day, not only are the funds that are located in each in those regions. So, for example, there's one in Los Angeles County, there's one in Austin, Texas, there's one in there's a couple others in Texas localities. There's one in Philadelphia, but there is a fund that is kind of a catch-all for entities that don't have their own around the country at Sea Change Capital Partners, the Lodestar Fund there. So if anybody in other parts of the country would be interested in how that works. If you have trouble finding sustained collaboration network, you can contact me and I'll get you to the right people, either at the right fund, or if there's interest in developing a fund in a locality, I can get you to folks who can help make the connections there too.
Thank you for that. I think that is, I believe, something we're going to see more of, especially as you mentioned, we're kind of operating as if we're still in COVID,
Yeah.
because crisis, we're still in crisis, we're still in uncertainty. And so I think we will start to see more strategic partnerships, collaborations, or at least I hope we do. And then
Yeah.
I think an exodus of leaders, maybe that baby boomer generation that has held on through COVID. They're still kind of holding on, and they're like, okay, I'm done. Like, it is time to pass the baton. And I think
Well,
that's a strategic opportunity to
yeah.
decide what does going forward look like. So thank you.
Well, and to piggyback on that, a generation that's coming in to potential leadership positions to saying, I'm not going to work myself to death like that.
That's right.
And this organization needs to change because it is not, you have not put together a sustainable HR plan in order to make it work. So it's both, right? It's not just hand it off, is it the right time? But it's, are we doing the things we should be doing? They're both really important conversations to have, and we're lucky to be able to be in a space to do that.
Gotta love that generational transformation, like
Yeah.
when we see that. And right now, I think we've got 5 generations in the workforce, and, seeing that change is
Yeah.
fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
one big question before we start to wrap up, but you've mentioned trust-based a couple of times. You even said, like, moving toward it, not in it, but I'm really curious how nonprofits can advocate, and really, should we be advocating for more trust-based and equitable funding? What does that look like? And maybe even for some of our listeners, like, what is trust-based philanthropy?
Well, trust-based philanthropy, and I'm not going to get the definition completely
That's
correct,
okay.
so forgive
Paraphrase.
me. But it's really rooted in the fact that you will have longer term relationships with a funder, and that they're going to give you no strings attached funding to do the work that you need to do. Reporting requirements, there's got to be some reporting requirements, but really the reporting is an ongoing relationship. It's not, you can only, I am giving you $5,000 to use for this, and then I'm going to ask you for a 20-page application in order to get that $5,000, and a 15-page report on how you spent every penny, and what the benefits were across the state after 6 months. It takes that a step back and says, I'm trusting you. I've built a relationship with your organization. You've done good work. Go forth and do good work. And then, let's have an ongoing conversation about what your needs are and how you can move that work forward. So, generally, I think it's a great move where entities are, instead of just let's pull applications in and, frankly, from my perspective as a former fundraiser and CEO, it's like, did the dice fall our way, right? Instead of there being long relationships, long standing proof of your delivery of your mission to a community over a period of time, or even a new concept that proves interesting, right? How do you lean in to that space? And I think that that also is something with the work that we're doing with our fund. I think we're trying to help break down some of those barriers around trust-based philanthropy, because I can tell you, when I walked into a position as a new CEO, and you go to someone and you say, "Oh, your grant is we're due to renew our grant, our multi-year grant," and I'd have people say, "Oh, well, you're a new CEO, so." We only take applications from organizations that have had CEOs for 3 to 5 years and nothing else. Or you're new, so we're going to see how you do before we put money into the organization. It's like, there's a long track record of this entity. I have done nothing to prove to you that I'm a risk. You should be leaning in those instances where there's someone new or there's change to say, we believe in the organization's mission. We're investing in the mission. Uh, and we're going to do that until there's a reason not to. And from the perspective of people talking about collaboration in new ways and joint ventures or joint programs, sometimes funders hear that and their first reaction is, what's wrong? What's happening? And I think being rooted in some way, even if only a little bit, in trust-based philanthropy isn't asking what's wrong, but
Right.
simply saying what's happening. I'd like to know more. Because it might not be a bad thing. It might be really fantastic for the community, but if you've got the wrong glasses on, it's going to be distorted. So I think back to your question about trust-based philanthropy, I think it really comes down to developing those relationships that we talked about before, and for funders to be open to those relationships too. I think, we talked a minute ago about this change in the kind of provider side of the nonprofit sector and turnover. Same thing is happening in philanthropy, right? You've got family foundations that are transferring to the next generation, sometimes very slowly, other times more quickly. But I think allowing for those conversations to happen, and don't just make assumptions that because it's always been done that way, it'll be done that way in the future, but opening the door. Have you ever thought about doing a grant like this? Sometimes funders might have never done something before, but unless you're the one asking or inquiring if they could be interested, you might be the one that gets a grant outside of that frame at some point, because there's one champion on that new board that suddenly is going to help shift the direction of the funding. So it's worth not nagging, obviously, but at least making sure that you've continued those relationships so people are open to possibilities.
Well, first of all, I think you nailed the definition. I like yours
Good.
way better than the ones I've seen. It's much more visible and vibrant to me. And second of all, you hit the nail on the head again, because this is really around building partnerships and deepening the relationships, not transactional ATM
No.
type of conversations.
Right, right. And it often feels, I think, in past experience, it often felt like it was an ATM experience.
And sometimes
Mom,
it
can I have a
is.
few more bucks because I need to go to the movies, right? Instead of, here's the things I want to do, and I need, in order to do that, I think I need these funds, and then watch me run with them. And let's have a continued conversation about how that works. The Satterberg Foundation, that's based in Washington State, and has one of the family members that's lived here and has made some transactions. They are full in 100% in trust-based philanthropy, and it's so exciting to hear them talk about what it means from their perspective. We trust, we make multi-year commitments, we have conversations. If you're hurting, tell us. We're not going to tell the world, but let us be a partner in helping you figure out how to solve that. It doesn't mean you're going to, necessarily write a check to fill the hole, but some of it could, and some of it could be making connections to help move the organization forward. So I think trying to think of philanthropy and helping philanthropy move forward as more of a partner in the work, not just a bank account in the work, is really important.
Super important. And you've been very generous in sharing, let me make an introduction for you, or, if there's another fund that I can help to, pass along information, I will do that. So that takes me to, how do we find you, right? Like
Yeah.
you as a person, but Arizona Together for Impact. If someone wants to learn more about you or the organization, where do we go?
Yeah, so we're easy. We're relatively easy to find. azimpact.org is our website. And you can find us there. You can find out information about our grant making and our programming. Am I locking up? I look like I'm locking up on my
A
screen.
little bit, but
Okay, let me start over again. You can find us at azimpact.org. Our website gives information to nonprofits. Geez, we're blaming Cox. I can see that I'm walking.
we were so good for so long.
I know. Okay. Okay. You can find Arizona Together for Impact at azimpact.org. We've got a lot of really amazing resources on our website about long-term sustained partnerships, relationships that advance nonprofit missions. We call that sustained collaboration. We've got information not only about our entity, but the Sustained Collaboration Network. And I can be reached at Christine at azimpact.org.
Thank you. Again, so very generous. And then one final question I always like to ask, is there a specific takeaway that you would want other leaders that are listening to this to know?
I think, having an open mind about working together and thinking about your organization, not just as your organization, but as a key in the greater ecosystem, addressing the issues you're trying to tackle as part of your mission and vision is so incredibly important because at the end of the day, none of us can do this on our own. We need all of us are interconnected in one way or another, and to figure out how we can work well together. Sometimes that means some type of sustained collaboration. Other times it just means opening the door, picking up the phone, having a conversation with somebody. I think that's really important, and I think that's important not only for long time, well established entities, but also for people who are considering they see a gap, they should be asking the same questions. I see a gap. I want to start a nonprofit. Well, how about like asking the questions? Who's doing similar work? Why aren't they filling that gap? Is there somebody who you don't know about who's filling that gap? So I think being curious and playing well with others are two things that I think are so important, both in the philanthropic and the nonprofit sector to advance missions.
I appreciate that. It takes us back full circle to when you really,
Yeah,
started open up saying, I've been in the sector for a while, worn a lot of hats. I play well with others. So
yeah.
there you have it. Thank you so very much for joining me for this conversation, sharing your valuable insights. I really hope that, for others listening to this has demystified and even intrigued them, right, to take on this relationship. I don't know, vision to really build out partnerships with funders. So thank you. I appreciate all that you've shared.
Thanks, Jarrett.